You're watching Commodities Corner. I'm Darren McDermott. Now, there are a number of causes for the recent rise in food prices, including abnormal weather conditions, the crisis in Ukraine and disease. I'm joined by Abdolreza Abasian, a senior economist at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Now, Abdolreza, can you go into a little bit more detail about these causes and how long do you see this problem of rising costs lasting?
It came all as a surprise because at the start of the year, January already, we saw in fact quite a decline in prices in general as measured by our own index, the FAO Food Price Index. It was at its lowest, in fact, in many months. But then situation changed. It changed because of weather developments, primarily in Brazil, but to some extent also in the U.S., affecting the grain crops and soybeans, to some extent also sugar and other commodities, but also because of political tensions that started basically since the start of the year, but it started to get, I would say, a little bit worse a bit later into February. So in February we saw that the actually prices overall went up. It was largely weather driven, but towards the end of the month it was also grain, and then we started the March month also with further problems coming in from the Black Sea as the situation there worsened. So this is the past. Now, looking into the current conditions, it seems that the Ukraine situation, at least for now, is settled peacefully, which means that a lot of the fears about the possible increases and further escalation of grain prices, at least, stemming from developments in Ukraine, may not be a big of an issue, at least for the time being. While the weather development still is a concern to some extent, again there, I think that the situation is not such that we should be too worried at this earlier stage for crops that will be harvested later this year. So basically, our take of the situation is that we had quite a strong price shock over the period of February, early March. We could be seeing more stabilizing these prices, and that the situation could be more or less going back to a normal situation until we know the result of the main harvests as we get closer to the summer.
Looking at specific soft commodities, the dry weather in Brazil has also had a big impact on sugar prices. We already saw sugar increase 6% this year. Now, what is your outlook for sugar for the coming months?
Sugar prices had made a huge correction down in 2013, especially during the second half of the year. The increase was quite sharp, as you mentioned, but it was very much weather-driven. To the extent that the drought in Brazil affecting the sugar, I think that remains the reality. There are also indications of cuts in India. However, the overall situation for sugar, even if prices were to increase a bit further, is not pointing to any extreme tightness in the market, as the supplies are still pretty adequate.
Moving on to grains, rising wheat prices could soon push up the cost of a loaf of bread. Now, are you concerned that Russia's incursion into Ukraine's Crimea region could actually disrupt grain shipments from Black Sea ports, which could drive prices higher?
Not on that particular point you mentioned about the ports. I know that there had been a lot of fears about this, but in fact all the major ports of Ukraine are outside that area. Perhaps something less than 2% of the shipment takes place from the area that is right now in dispute. So we do not expect that there will be any major interruption from Ukraine point of view. In fact, all the signs are that so far trade has been taking place without an interruption. The bulk of the wheat has been already, in fact, sold and shipped out of Ukraine for this season, and also most part of the maize. And Ukraine is the third largest exporter of maize. Into the next season, 14-15, I think there is much more focus right now on the outcome of the production, which seems pretty good. And I think that it will be very unlikely to expect any interruption in trade or port issue There may be that some countries, especially North Africa, which are big importers of wheat from Ukraine, that they may have problem or they may decide not to source from Ukraine because they could fear some uncertainty. That could be a possibility, and if they divert to other suppliers, that could push prices elsewhere up. But I do not see that actually the problem gets initiated from Ukraine itself. So overall, we think that the Ukraine situation definitely has created some price volatility that had contributed to instability and some uncertainty, but we do not think that it will affect so much the supply side and that the situation should return more or less to normal as we progress into the new season.
Abdolreza, thank you very much. Well, viewers, do stay tuned as we have plenty more interviews heading your way. Goodbye for now.